Compounding interest does not change your life day to day. In fact, compounding interest is always been about scarcity, right? How do we, save more? And then of course, it never feels like it's enough. And they'll of course tell you, do you realize that any asset you die with is taxable life insurance? Hello, my fellow Ripplers. This is Chris Miles, your cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor. This show is for you, those that work so hard for your money, and you're now ready for your money to start working harder for you today so that you're work optional. You work because you want to, not because you have to. And it's not just about getting rich, it's about living a rich life, because as you are blessed financially, you have a greater capacity to bless the lives of those around you. Thank you for allowing me to create a ripple effect through you guys. Again, I appreciate so much. So many of you guys have been reaching out. You've been giving us great feedback on the show recently. I know that I've put a lot more thought and attention to these episodes and want to add more value. Not to mention, guys, if you haven't already checked it out, we've been throwing out new upgraded YouTube videos on our Money Ripples channel. So if you haven't seen those, be sure to check that out today. That's different than this channel. This is the Money Ripples podcast channel. Be sure to subscribe to the Money Ripples channel as well. All right, so I want to go back to something that, for me, I realize I take it for granted because it's basic in my mind, but I realize that for many of you, you may not be able to see it. Now, for those of you listening, hopefully you'll still be able to follow along. You can picture in your head. If not, I would still recommend going to watch this YouTube video as well, just so you can understand, really, how do we create an income avalanche, right? How do you compound income versus just focusing on compounding interest? Compounding interest does not change your life day to day. In fact, compounding interest is always a promise of someday, but what about now? This is one of the biggest problems I have in the financial advisor world, is that they're always telling you to compound your interest, right? Set it and forget it, put it away forever, save everything you possibly can, but it does nothing for your day-to-day living. It does nothing to protect you here and now. It gives you money. Yeah, it looks great on a computer screen or on a piece of paper, but at the end of the day, it does nothing to improve or enrich your lives, and especially blessing your family's lives and giving you the freedom that you really deserve. And that's one of the biggest beefs that I have in the financial world. And of course, I was the one as a financial advisor teaching this very thing, but seeing that it didn't work for my father, who of course had to work into his 70s before he was finally forced into retirement due to health reasons, versus, of course, on the other side, which is what we're doing is creating that freedom now, right? And that's what I was able to do in my own life and many of our clients' lives as well. And so I want to talk about compounding income versus compounding interest, and really how does this whole wealth wheel work? For those of you watching this right now, yesterday I just did a video actually on the wealth wheel. So if you can go check out, it's actually going to be on our other. It's actually on this channel, the Money Ripples podcast channel. We did an actual masterclass on the subject to go more in depth. Here, I'm just going to give you a good overview, but I recommend you also go check out that masterclass we did yesterday. All right, so let's talk about first and foremost, there's a cause and effect relationship. You're always taught, always, right? And I was taught this too, right? That you got to build and compound your money inside some retirement accounts or whatever it might be. And then finally, when you get to those olden golden years, you can start pulling money off. But don't pull out too much, because you don't want to lose too much, right? You don't want to pull out too much and then run out of money, and then you can't live. And that's always been the case. It's always been about scarcity, right? How do we, save more? And then of course, it never feels like it's enough. And they'll of course tell you that you didn't save enough, because they'll promise you all these high returns and you don't get it. That's the one thing. So it's always about building that net worth and then finally living on just a teeny bit of that net worth so that you don't run out of money before you die. This is also why many insurance companies will teach you cancel your life insurance, right? They'll say, cancel your life insurance, just buy term insurance, invest the rest, cancel it when you're older because you'll have enough assets to take care of your family and everything else. Do you realize that any asset you die with is taxable life insurance? Think about it. If you have a 401k that you die with it, when it passes on to your family, guess what? It's taxed, right? It passes on to them. Now that you could do, they start to have things like stretch IRAs, but even that they're talking about getting rid of or putting limitations on, right? So even that's debatable. But even then, that's a taxable account. So you're passing on something that's not even tax-free. You're passing on something to your heirs that they'll have to get taxed on anyways. So that's not what we're talking about here. So it's how do we really create something that builds wealth and even builds multi-generational wealth, something that goes beyond you, right? Something that's not just helping you have a great life today, which is of course what you should have, versus sacrificing, deferring, suffering in the meantime so that hopefully someday you have something. Instead, how can you enjoy your life now and still be able to pass on and create a multi-generational legacy for your family where they're better off than you were, and not in a place of being spoiled, but actually having more money? So let me show you this kind of illustration right now. So this is how I see it, right? This is a cause and effect relationship. Everybody's telling you the opposite. They always start at the top showing you net worth. You'll see here there's net worth, cash flow, human capital, right? Or value that's offered. So everybody always tells you build up that net worth, and then you could pull off some cash flow, not a lot, but just enough, 3% of whatever your retirement accounts are, right? So you don't run out of money. And then you can finally live your life. We teach the opposite. We teach that you have your life right now and don't have to sacrifice and suffer and whatever it might be. Now, I'm not saying you don't have discipline. Of course, if you're a disciplined saver, that's great. But disciplined saver that generates cash flow, right? It generates cash flow now. Then that cash flow builds net worth. That's the cause and effect. In fact, if you look at it, that's really the truth of how it is, right? Retirement planners, financial advisors, and planners, they're always telling you just build up that net worth and then enjoy life. We're talking about how can you live a rich life now? How can you actually live a rich life now? Generate that cash flow by creating more value, increase your income by adding value, whether you're a business owner and you're trying to find ways to be better through systems and through people and processes, as well as through your own value and how you're able to do that better for people. Or even if you're an intrapreneur versus an entrepreneur, you're an intrapreneur where you work inside of a company as an employee and you're working to actually help add value. Again, the more value you can add, the more money you make. This is a key thing that's always missed, especially in financial planning. They're always telling you, of course, just save whatever you can, whatever scraps you can get together, throw it into their investments where they get paid. They get paid cash flow year after year, while you just wait and suffer and save. That's what they teach. This is the opposite. You actually use your life, your human capital, your human value to create more cash flow. What is cash flow? Cash flow is the difference between your income and your expenses. So cash flow, although it's been synonymous with income, and that's a big part of it, I'm talking about cash flow from a Robert Kiyosaki sense, right? Which is income minus expenses. What do you left over every single month after you've paid your bills? That is cash flow. That is the only true way to really build net worth without trying to gamble. Yes, there's ways you could buy real estate and it could appreciate. You can increase your net worth without increasing cash flow. There are things like that. You could even be breaking even paycheck to paycheck. But if you have debts that you're paying at least principal and interest payments on, guess what? You could build net worth because you build equity. And that's really the key thing here, is that as you have that extra income, you get to choose what to do it. This is why I say cash flow creates more options. And then with more options, you have more choices and freedom to be able to do what you want with it. Imagine if all of a sudden in your life, you got an extra $2,000, $3,000 a month coming in right now. That's after taxes. In case you're wondering, this is just money coming in that you now have in your life that you didn't have yesterday. How would your life change? How would you feel differently about your situation? Would you feel a little bit more relaxed? I know a lot of you will say, oh, I can breathe easier, right? I can just relax. I can finally actually enjoy a little bit of my life. Maybe I could take a day off work here and there and actually enjoy time with my family. Maybe I can even take that vacation and not worry about it. Imagine if you could take a vacation and not worry about not just the cost of the vacation, but not worrying about how you're losing money by not working. Whether you're a business owner or you're an employee, the worries are the same. I've seen so many business owners saying, if I'm not working, I'm not making money, because they're self-employed, or they're more just small business owners, but they don't have a real business system where it operates independently of them. This is actually where I'm getting my business more and more to that place in Money Ripples. At first it was just a solopreneur thing, kind of a side hustle. It wasn't a side hustle. It was more just a thing that I did regardless of the money, right? Now I've started to build a business. I'm saying, how can I build it to where it's scalable, and even to a point where it doesn't even have to have Chris Miles as much in it, right? Where it's not as person focused. It's more of a company. It's more of a team approach. It's something that can continue beyond me, even if I were to die today. By the way, no plans on plan to live, right? But those kind of things, right? That's the kind of thing that I look at. So as a business owner, I know you've got stresses. So having that extra $2,000 or $3,000 a month could make a big difference in your life. And maybe you might say, well, Chris, I make 25,000, 30,000 a month. Maybe I make, $1 million a year, 2 million a year. Okay, great. Who doesn't like more cash flow? Like it's even if it's not 2 or 3 thousand a month. What if it was an extra 5,000, 10,000 a month? Would that make a difference in your life? Yeah, of course it would, right? That's the power of cash flow. Now, if your net worth all of a sudden, like you looked on paper and you found out your net worth increased by $1 million, but your cash flow didn't change, do you think you'd really feel much better? Of course not. It's just a number, right? This is why I tell people like you have a retirement account. Now you might get excited if all of a sudden there's another $1 million in your retirement account. You might even show it off to a few people. But at the end of the day, you know the truth. You're going to say, yeah, but so what? The only reason you get excited is if it led to more cash flow in your life. Again, reverse your thinking. Do not think that you have to build income and assets or build assets, all these assets, to then always generate cash flow. Even though that's true to some level, don't get caught in that trap. It's not where you have to get lucky and you have to win the lottery or something has to happen or somebody has to die for you to finally have some money. Do not count on that. Focus first and foremost on you as the creator and producer in your life. How can you generate more income and even be a wise steward of your money, tracking your expenses and everything else so that you have more cash flow, more profit in your life every single month? If you're a business owner, you want profit in the business and you want profit at home. Then that profit will naturally increase your net worth. Net worth will have to increase because here's what happens. So see here, we have income and expenses. The difference between the two gives you cash flow. Now, the difference between that, cash flow can either go in one of two places. Either one, it builds as an asset, right? So, for example, you have an extra, say, $1,000 a month. Where does that money go? Could it go to a savings account? Yes. That then increases your asset of a savings account. Assets, anything you own, right? Where a liability is anything that you tend to owe. This is something like your debt or your mortgages. So it's like, say, for example, you have an extra $1,000 a month. You might say, you know what, I'm going to pay that towards a credit card and pay that down. Well, great. As you pay down that credit card, that increases your asset because your net worth is your assets minus your liabilities, the things that you own versus the things that you owe. That's the net worth. And I know I'm overly simplifying this. There's going to be some accountant or CPA going to say, well, that's not exactly true, Chris, because my number fact checking says this. I get it. I'm oversimplifying this. Okay. But look at it. Like you have extra cash flow. Either you increase an asset by putting that as some kind of savings or buying an asset, or two, you're paying down a loan that increases net worth. Now, if you have negative cash flow, what if you have more expenses than income, right? So now you're negative cash flow. You don't have enough money. You're going to do one of two things. Either pull from the asset, you're going to pull out of savings to be able to pay for that thing, which means your net worth drops, or you run up a credit card or something like that, to use a line of credit, maybe a home equity line of credit or a credit card, you run that balance up, which of course, that also lowers your net worth, right? So that's the key. Income minus expenses equals cash flow. That's your profit. Assets minus liabilities equals your net worth. If you want to increase your net worth, increase your cash flow. And here's the cool thing. If you do it right, you use that cash flow, right? You increase your cash flow and use that to ideally, yes, you could pay down some liabilities, but at the end of the day, you can only pay down debt so far where it's not productive. Can you also buy assets and even better, cash flow, cash flowing assets, right? So you're not just buying an asset, but it's an asset that cash flows. This is why we talk about real estate investing, right? Because you buy a real estate property, it can cash flow. And yes, it can also appreciate. It can actually increase your net worth and increase your cash flow. And then when you take that cash flow, use it to also increase your net worth some more. So you create this acceleration. Becomes this income avalanche. Now, I know it doesn't always have to be a rental property. It could be simply as just lending your money out to real estate investors, right? Lend your money out to them. You get paid a certain return. So if you have that extra, I'm being overly simplistic, $1,000 a month, right? That's 12,000 a year. Now, I know there's not a lot of investments you can invest 12,000, but just bear with me. That 12,000 a year, if it makes 10%, that's another 1,200 a year of cash flow or $100 a month of cash flow. You use that to then go and reinvest again into cash flowing real asset backed investments. I say that because I don't want people to go buy a whole bunch of different digital coins and things like that. Yeah, you might make money, but you probably won't. You might make money here, but you might not. And it still doesn't get to the point that it does not generate income for you. I like income producing assets, real assets that are backed by something real, not digital currencies, not even by stocks, even though that could produce dividends, right? There are a little bit of those there, but even then, it's kind of hard to rely upon it. For example, I just had a couple that talked to me recently, and they were talking about their stocks that they had. They'd bought, so they inherited some Verizon stock and AT&T stock from 1997. But overall, guess what? It only made them roughly about 35% since then. 35%. Think about that. Now the wife, she was using this as contrast because she was the one that inherited it. Her father told her, listen, don't spend it. Just do what I do. Set it and forget it. Let it sit there and accumulate and grow. So she did. Her sister, however, also inherited the same stock. It's split between the two of them. She inherited that stock, but she actually went and bought land and started doing some other things in real estate investing. And what's interesting is my client here, she said, Chris, like, here's the big difference. Even though we're doing it now, because they have been investing for the last 4 or 5 years now into more like real estate and things like that. She's like, even though we're doing that now, how much farther ahead would we have been had back in the late 90s, we instead started buying assets like that, like my sister did, where they've made literally millions. And she's like, it wasn't like they did a lot. They just made the right decisions by buying these right assets. And so she's now that those stocks aren't worth like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now it's worth millions of dollars because they put it in that instead. That's the difference, guys, is that you want real income producing assets. And again, they bought just assets. Some of them weren't income producing. Imagine what would happen if instead you bought income producing assets. What would that have done after 27 years? And I already know what this couple's done. I mean, they've already gone up. They've gotten almost to the point they could quit. They got a little bit to go still, but probably in the next 5 years or so, they would have enough money to be able to retire. That means they would be able to do it in roughly like 9 or 10 years from the time that they worked with us. As opposed to if they had that even 27 years ago, what would their life be like today? I mean, it would be hard to imagine, I'm sure, for them, especially if you do it the right way. This is my point, guys, is that you want to improve your cash flow. This is why you want to track your money and be a wise steward of your money, and either use that to pay down liabilities, especially those non-productive debts and things like that, and or you actually go and buy cash flowing assets that then increase your net worth. And then that net worth, of course, continues as you start to build and grow those assets. You reinvest those to buy more cash flow in producing assets. That is the real secret here. And that is what I want to try to show you with this wealth wheel. So you'll see at the top of this wealth wheel, we have principles, right? Now, principles are just like what I taught you, understanding the principles of cash flow. What are cash flow versus net worth? How does that all flow and work through? And how do you flow it through, right? So those principles, understand the principles of abundance too, because you could be in scarcity, make money, and still be broke. So there's a lot of principles involved here for prosperity, for wealth that you have to understand. Now, as you're improving that cash flow, you're growing that, that's where that max ROI infinite banking policy comes in. Many people ask, hey, Chris, I've got 10,000 bucks, 20,000 bucks, 50,000 bucks, whatever I've saved up. What should I invest in? And I'll say, well, nothing yet. You don't have enough. And I mean, and even if you did have enough, still, one of the ways you can actually speed up this wheel's acceleration a little bit more is having these max ROI infinite banking policies. As a great place to store money and store cash. But two, as you've heard me talk about before, it also gives you the ability to double dip. You can actually earn money in two places at once, earning a little extra interest because this interest is tax-free, protected from lawsuits and creditors because you don't need anybody to wipe out your money right when you're trying to build it. And then three, it also has the ability to get that leverage where you can borrow the money, yes, pay interest from the insurance company because they have a collateralized line of credit. But then even though you're borrowing that money, as you're using this to buy cash flow producing assets, using the cash flow to pay back towards that line of credit, paying down the interest and earning a net positive return of interest, meaning that they're paying you interest the whole time because you didn't pull the money out. You left it in there while you used their money and you were able to make more in compounding interest than you paid them in simple interest. Doing those things then allows you to have more cash to then invest in these passive income investments that then keeps flowing through again and again and again. That is the income avalanche I talk about. That's how you compound income versus just compounding interest. Financial advisors who want and financial institutions that want to be paid forever will tell you to set it and forget it, put it into their places where they'll compound their own income off of you by charging you that money. If you say, no, they don't charge me. Yes, they do. They pay you less as a result of that. You really think that the return that they're paying you right there is a gross return, that they get paid nothing, they do it for free? Of course you're paying them. They make money off of you, off of the assets under management. They're telling you to compound interest because that's in their best interest, not in your best interest. Screw the whole compounding interest crap because you don't even know if you'll be alive to enjoy the compounding interest. Compound your income now. What can you do right now to build that growth? And yes, even if you only have 10, 20, $50,000 and you're not quite ready, because I recommend you have at least 100,000 before you start investing. But if you've got at least that, you can start there. And by the way, if you're a business owner, these principles work faster. You have a greater ability to do this faster because you can create more profit in your business, which creates more profit at home. And then that also increases the ability to buy cash flow income producing assets that then allows you to have massive income and get you to the point where you work because you want to, not because you have to. This is how the big picture works. This is what, again, that you've got to erase that old mentality of compounding interest, which just pays the financial advisor more than it will pay you. Stop it. Stop letting your money do all the work for them to pay them. Get your money to work harder for you today and giving you that freedom now. Because you just don't never know what's going to happen in your life. I never know if I'm going to be around long term. You don't know that either. But you can make a decision today to make a difference in your life right now. That is my challenge to you guys is get rid of that mentality of compounding interest because we all know that really hasn't worked for people. We all know that people have been saving for years, saving for decades, and then living a very meager life, right? They're just trying to eke out a living in retirement, and they need Social Security because it was never enough. They could never save enough in cruddy mutual funds that really don't pay you that much, anyways. When you could be actually investing in real assets that produce real income right now. That's the difference. Guys, obviously, if we can help you, reach out to us at moneyripples.com. But my challenge to you is this is stop focusing on compounding interest and instead ask yourself, how can I get this money, these assets, to start producing income for me so I don't have to always produce income for my family? That's the key, guys. Make it a wonderful and prosperous week. We'll see you later.